Good evening. Welcome to the May 17th City Council meeting. If you'll please stand and join me, we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. No masks, new day, very exciting. Jackie, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Hewlin,
Here.
Parker,
Present.
Kling,
Here.
Schroeder,
Present.
Southall,
Here.
Marchant,
Present.
Mayor Pepper.
I'm here. Thank you. All right. First thing is always open forum. Anybody here want to talk about anything that's not on the agenda? If that's on the agenda, you'll speak during that time. If so, please come forward. Seeing none, hearing none, we will then move on to our consent agenda. I know Heather wants a claim.
Yes.
The claim's pulled for right now. Anything else we
Yes,
need to pull from consent? Okay.
Motion to approve consent agenda. Second.
Okay. Jackie, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall, Marchant.
Aye.
Motion carries. Let's go back up to claims and grab them.
Motion to approve the claim. Second.
Okay, Jackie, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Hewlin,
Abstain.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall, Marchant.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Brian, new thing we've been doing is kind of just hitting the highlights off of our consent agenda. A couple things you want to share with everybody at
Yeah.
home?
Thanks, Mayor. And just a number of the items under consent are the city council setting public hearings. So that's, there'll be a public hearing at later dates. It's the state, the legal timeframe through which somebody can provide public comments on a matter before council considers something. Pay up for the wastewater treatment plant, that progress is going forward. I think Andy's going to talk about a budget amendment for that later on today. Second consideration of that mobility, micro mobility ordinance that Planning and Zoning and the Parks and Recs Commission looked at and developed a recommendation up to the city council. The professional service agreement with the North River Arts Council. This is something that council authorized or directed staff to work with our new Fine Arts Commission on a couple months ago. We finally got back the revised draft for the professional service agreement from that group. So a number of items that have been discussed before or setting future actions for the council.
Thank you for hitting those highlights. We're very excited for our Fine Arts Commission to have that strategic planning session. Very exciting. All right, we'll call our city treasurer up, Doug Scholl. You got a report for us?
Boy, that was quick.
I know.
I'll try to be equally quick. Okay, the mayor council, the report that's in front of you is for the 10th month of the 2021 year. Just 2 months to go in this particular year. Again, I try to look at all the balances compared to a year ago. And the general fund balances have really, they've continued to grow. So they're in an awful, in my opinion, an awful good position. The local option sales tax, it's up a couple, I think it's 2.1 million over last year. And the only comment I'd make about that is that I know it's way ahead of what we budgeted in. So it's fantastic. The health insurance is up 620,000 over last year's balance. And the only thing that's kind of unusual in this report is Jackie explained to me that we had 3 payrolls in the month of April, and that caused IMU to actually owe the city, and it's almost $390,000. And I guess that had to do with those payrolls. And other than that, I don't know that there's anything. I thought maybe one thing that was a little bit unusual, and I didn't pursue it too much, was the Bankers Trust. The 1.82% was last year at the same time, it was 0.85. Now that's really kind of unusual because if you looked at, well, the sweep account's the same, 0.4. The Iowa agency, which we don't have much in there, was a year ago 0.13, and this year is 0.01. So maybe a little bit unusual with the Bankers Trust, but that's a good thing. The balance, as far as it's down from a year ago, but that's because of IMU being removed from all the assets. So that's my comments, subject to any questions anybody might have.
Questions for Doug?
Thank you.
Motion to accept the treasurer's report.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
good to go.
Thanks,
Thanks, Doug.
Doug.
Next is receive and file the EMS billing activity report for March 2021. Receive and file.
Second.
Okay. Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. On to Greater Des Moines Convention and Visitors Bureau report. John Parker.
Yep, we had our meeting on the Wednesday after our last council meeting. So got a few updates here. We just received the annual budget by email on Thursday. We'll be approving that at our next meeting. This year I was not able, didn't have time. I wasn't able to be on the budget committee, but it looks like we put together a pretty good budget. It's expanded a little bit, so things are kind of opening up a little bit. I do know that they're starting to see maybe a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with some of the events that are happening. They were more talking about inside events rather than outside events. So outside events, they said, are really coming along, and that's fine. But they were more concerned about business meetings and those types of events that had really fallen off. And one of the comments that came up that over the last year, 389 event cancellations and postponements due to COVID-19, which resulted in a loss of direct economic impact of more than $323 million in the Des Moines metro area. But what they've done is they've split their sales team is focusing on go back, capture some of those things and bring them back. And then also we've picked up a number of events in the Des Moines metro area that others, Chicago lost a number by being shut down, and we picked up a number of events there. So they're spending some money on radio ads with Chicago Cubs. Covers a lot of the Midwest when it just happened to be as they were because they've always passed every year. They call, and say, hey, advertise with us, and they got to looking and knowing that people aren't still ready to start traveling long distances, maybe short weekend trips. So they started noticing where the radio stations are and kind of the coverage area, and so they've picked up a number of. They've noticed that they can tell on game days how much activity is going on on the internet with impressions and stuff. So it seems to be working. All in all, they've got a big event starting this weekend for the Dew Tour to support the new skate park. This is actually an international event. There's people from all over the world coming in to skate because it is actually the only, I believe now it's the only Olympic qualifying event in the world. So there's skaters from all over. So it's a big deal. It's kind of I guess they've got everything set up pretty much for ESPN, and some of the comments I heard today on the radio this morning were that it really looks neat, and they're excited about hopefully have good weather and show well for Des Moines area. So anyway, that's my report. So
Kudos to them. We wish Greg Marchant all the best in his competition at the skate park.
Thank you. Thanks for everybody sponsoring.
We'll be cheering for you at the games this summer.
I hope to make it.
Thank you, John.
Yep.
Appreciate you
No problem.
representing us there. All right, Bob Kling, how about Metro Advisory Report?
You bet. We met on May 11th, and I did send the council an update, but there's been some changes that I'll just briefly go over. One of the Senate bills that has to do with eliminating the local county mental health service levies and having the state pick it up. One thing that the Senate bill has in it that the House bill does not, and that is part 2 of it, is to phase out the local backfill payments over a 5 or 8 year period. Well, the Senate is trying to make a relationship between those two, and there is no relationship between the two. And, but right now, that idea of phasing it out, the whole bill is still in, that's still in committee. Broadband funding bill, of course, that's been passed and signed by the governor. Let's see, Senate File 342, which includes several law enforcement related items, also includes allowing police officers and firefighters to be paid out of their accrued sick leave upon retirement. The bill has passed the House. It's unclear whether the Senate will take it up. The diversity training, that bill has passed and been signed by the governor. And then the last one that I pointed out was the governor did sign into law the legislation that prohibits local governments from adopting an ordinance to prohibit housing and discrimination based on source of income. So those are pretty much highlights of what I sent you before. Yes.
Okay, great. They did also recommend, didn't they, that we reach out to our
Oh, yes.
representatives on backfill.
On
so-
that back, they want us to reach out, I meant to say that, to our representatives about that backfill and point out there is no relationship between the two and there's no reason to make that relationship, so.
Thank you for attending that and always providing a great detailed report. And then Bravo, got an update for us on that, Bob?
Okay, I'm on the Community Investment Committee, which is the grant making committee, and I think I announced, I thought it was an April meeting, but I want to bring it up again, that on March 12th, the awards were announced for the Cultural Leadership Grant recipients for the general operating support. And once again, our own Des Moines Metro Opera was awarded $172,000. Week before last, I finished reviewing and scoring grants for Bravo's capital project grants. And those are grants for comprehensive and cohesive construction, expansion, renovation, or replacement project for an existing facility. And our committee then will meet next week and we'll make, and then we will review those and make our final recommendations to the entire board. And then the board will meet in June to see who the actual, see who got those grants.
That's a busy committee to be on,
Yeah,
lots
yeah,
of review.
Yeah.
But thank you for doing that and thank you for that report. Appreciate all of you serving on all of those committees. Next item is mayor's report. Well, it was a big day in Indianola. I want to start by thanking our street department, our water pollution control department, our police department, and our community and economic development department. If you haven't seen, Howard and Buxton have gone two-way and the square is two-way. I think it's been a good day. AP and Brian are going to give us an update here in just a minute, but I want to thank them and to all of our citizens, be patient. Yes, we know they're working on the county courthouse. Yes, there's traffic from them. Yes, there are people figuring out how to drive backwards on the square. If they have never done it or haven't done it in years.
Legally.
Legally, exactly, yes. But thank you. Our street department, for those that didn't know, we're out at 1 a.m. changing signs. So that was an early day for them. They're probably all in bed right now, except for AP, who's going to talk in a minute. But thanks to all of you for that. I attended the IMU board meeting last week. One of the big items on their agenda, of course, was the health insurance. Numerous questions answered by our consultant, and they approved it. And so we'll be talking about that later in the evening. And I also attended for the first time the statewide mayor's meeting. They meet quarterly. Found that to be very interesting. Good to hear what they had to say. They were talking about the American Rescue Plan, which is the money that's coming through as part of the CARES Act to the cities. And so lots of good information. I was sharing that, of course, with our city staff as well. And then I was invited to meet with the mayor of Carlisle and Norwalk. So I had a good conversation with them, which leads to one of the things they wanted to talk about was tomorrow, the Warren County Supervisors are meeting at 6 p.m. I will be attending that meeting. Their big discussion is to move from 3 supervisors to 5 supervisors. And so I've reached out to all of council and I will share and advocate and share on your behalf that council and I are in support of that move. I think that would be better representation for all of us. Our county is growing. It's a big county. I think better representation, more representation is good. Plus it also gives them a chance to have better communication amongst themselves and not be in violation of Iowa private meeting laws. So we'll see what happens with that. They can move it forward or it can go to vote with a public petition. So we'll see what happens with that. And then I just also want to give a shout out to our square businesses. We know this is trying time, but good things are coming. We're excited about where things are going. We have a couple new ones on the square, so I want to welcome Lulabelle and Willow Moon Apothecary. If you haven't been there, please go, please visit. But I also will always do a shout out to all of our community businesses. They are really doing a great job, and I have really diversified, and Indianola is very vibrant, and we are appreciative of all that they do. And I also want to call out that new artwork, if you haven't seen it, on the side of the Lulabelle design. Very nice. Add some bright sunshine, really, to our square. So thanks to them for that. Under community update, I'd like to hear from AP, who is head of our street department, and Brian from the police department. You both want to come forward, but please share with us what happened today. What do you know? What have you seen? What do you learn? What do we need to emphasize? Here comes AP.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your patience and support with this change. The street staff has completed all the signage installation. We have contracted for pavement marking removal. That's been completed too. And tonight they will come back and finish the new pavement marking, which is the double yellow lines, stop bars, or anything with painting. The only thing that we are not confident of finishing is the on-street parking located west of the square, because there's too much dirt around that. We are not sure whether we can get it cleaned up. We'll give an attempt tonight, but if it's a little dirty, we will not. We'll have to come back later when the pavement is drier. So it started raining this week, and it has to be completely dry. So we finished an assessment before the council meeting. We finished an assessment that it's dry enough that we can paint it tonight at 10 p.m. and it'll dry up by 2 or 3 p.m., 3 a.m. in the morning. So we expect all the double yellow stop bars, anything regulatory, to be fully functional by tomorrow morning. If you have noticed, there's one block of pavement, one block of street on Buxton Street between Highway 92 or West 2nd Avenue and West 1st Avenue. That is still a one-way traffic. The reason for that is because there's signals involved in there. The signals, there's signal heads, there's pavement marking, which is part of the streetscape project by Absolute Concrete. Absolute Concrete is going to do the square job. That is one of their priorities, to complete that work. But having said that, there's a lead time by the time they order the equipment needed for that conversion. So we are still expecting sometime in August, September to have this transition. We had to get the DOT approvals for the signal changes and everything. So that's the reason why we left that one block as a one-way traffic. So I don't have anything else. Brian, you?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We had 0 calls to Warren County Dispatch or to our non-emergency numbers today. The only 2 minor issues that we dealt with is AP and I talked. We had some cars parked the wrong way. I think it was North Buxton. Contacted Simpson Security. Simpson's great to work with, and they were students and had them moved. And the other was a little congestion on the east side of the square. We had patrol go out there, and by the time they got there, just a few minutes later, there was no congestion. So okay, that was it. That's all we dealt with.
Good.
Awesome,
That's great
Jill.
to hear.
Thank you.
Thank you both for both of your updates and reports. We
Yep,
appreciate
thank
that. And I'm assuming you'll both keep an eye on it, as it's still a very new process. So you'll be all hands on deck this week. Questions for AP or Brian?
Just tell your
Big
staff.
thanks.
Yes,
Yes,
thank you.
big
so much.
thanks.
It's I drove and it just seems so normal and natural, like a real city. I mean, it was not a problem.
As if you drag normal.
I think many of us drove it today, so
I was down there twice. I didn't see anything. It's
good.
all going well.
Good. All right, next on our agenda is a proclamation declaring May Mental Health Awareness Month. I will read it. It says, whereas good mental health is essential to everyone's overall health and well-being, and whereas mental health conditions are real and prevalent in our nation, and whereas prevention is an effective way to reduce the burden of mental health conditions, and whereas there is a strong body of research that animal companionship, humor, spirituality, religion, recreation, social connections, and work-life balance can help all Americans protect their health and well-being. And whereas stigma and fear of discrimination keep many who would benefit from mental health services from seeking help. And whereas with effective treatment, those individuals with mental illnesses can recover and lead full, productive lives. And whereas good mental health is critical to the well-being of our families, communities, schools, and businesses. And whereas each business, school, government agency, healthcare provider, organization, and citizen shares the burden of mental health problems and has a responsibility to promote mental health wellness and support prevention efforts. Therefore, I, Mayor Pam Pepper, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Mental Health Month in the City of Indianola. As the Mayor of the City of Indianola, I also call upon the citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools in the City of Indianola to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental health, reducing stigma and discrimination, and promoting appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illnesses. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Indianola, Iowa, this 17th day of May, 2021. All right. We will move on to public consideration and old business. First item is third consideration of an ordinance amending the city code of the City of Indianola to increase the stormwater utility fees from $2 to $6 per equivalent residential unit.
Move approved.
Second.
Okay. Questions, comments? We've heard this. AP, you can come talk. We want to hear you.
Mayor and Council, so you have approved a stormwater audit and a stormwater master plan back in last year, I think. And as a part of that audit, the stormwater master plan completed and recognized about $6.3 million of projects that's needed, infrastructure improvements that's needed for the stormwater. So with the current rate, it's going to take about 28 years or so to complete. So what we recognized, the council recognized that increasing the stormwater fee to $6 would take about 9 years to complete. As a part of that, since September of last year, you have gradually been introduced to adopt the stormwater plan, and then you have directed staff towards making these changes. So at this reading, you're approving the final reading of the stormwater ordinance change, which includes an increase of fee from $2 to $6 and some wording changes as far as references from street superintendent to public works director.
Yes. Questions for EP? Okay.
Mayor, I apologize. I didn't get who motioned and seconded. Who has up?
Bob made the motion.
Okay. And second.
I believe I seconded it.
Okay, thank
There
you.
you go. Good.
Sarah.
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Supplemental agreements with Snyder and Associates. We have a resolution approving an amendment to the supplemental agreement number 12 with Snyder and Associates for the South K Street paving project. Here comes AP again.
Thank you. So these are for engineering contracts with Snyder and Associates to complete the design work and also help with bidding and construction inspection services when the construction is occurring. So the South K Street and Hillcrest Avenue has been recognized in the capital improvement plan. And so we have this timeline. The projected estimates over there for South K Street, those are with current estimates, which may fluctuate when the time comes, but it's just an estimate at this moment.
Okay. Questions? Okay. Jack.
I do want to make a motion. I'm still reading those dates on there and just can't believe it. Yes, move to approve.
Second. All right. Jackie, please.
Councilmember Southall,
Aye.
Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, resolution approving a supplemental agreement with Snyder and Associates for the Hillcrest Avenue pavement reconstruction. That information is also up on the screen.
Move to approve is read.
Second.
Okay, questions? Jackie?
Councilmember Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall. Aye. Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, fiscal year 21 budget. Here comes Andy. We need to have a public hearing on the amendments to the fiscal year 21 budget.
Motion to go into public hearing?
Second.
Jackie?
Councilmember Hewlin.
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall. Aye. Marchant.
Aye.
Okay, we're in a public hearing.
Mayor, members of the council, this is a pretty straightforward amendment, just a final amendment for the FY21 budget so that we don't spend over what is allowed by the council, authorized by the council. There's two items that are on this amendment. One is for the debt service fund to make the final payments. We make two payments in the year for debt service. The first one on December 1st is for half of the interest on each of the bond notes. The second one is June 1st is the interest and principal on each of the bond notes. When we did the refinance, I did the estimates for the June 1st payment. When I looked back and saw what the actual numbers were, we were off by about 25,000. So we're lessening our costs and interest, but we still have to make these principal payments. So that's all that amendment is. And the other one is simply the water resource recovery facility. We're just moving some of the construction from FY22 to FY21. It's $5 million. Don't know if we'll get through that whole $5 million. We may still be doing some of that, maybe half of that, or maybe a quarter of that still in FY22. But by making this amendment, this allows us to make those payments for that construction if we do that in May and also in June for that project. So no increase in cost. We get reimbursed by that through the state revolving fund, which of course is borrowing that money, but we do get reimbursed for that. No increase in the contract or anything like that. We're just shifting the construction.
So
I'll take any questions.
So we can adjust it bigger. We don't need to go back an amendment if we don't spend the full $5 million, right?
Correct.
Okay. Just making sure that's understandable.
Other questions for Amy? Okay. Anybody else want to speak on this topic? Okay, I'll take a motion to go out.
Motion to go out of public hearing?
Second.
Okay, Jackie?
Councilmember Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker.
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall. Aye. Marchant.
Aye.
Motion carries. So then we need a resolution approving the amendments to the fiscal year 21 budget.
I so
moved.
move.
We'll give it to Bob and Heather will second.
Perfect.
Jackie?
Councilmember Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall. Aye. Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. On to new business. Resolution approving the city's annual insurance renewals.
Motion to approve?
Second. Okay. As I mentioned earlier, IMU agreed to this. We had a meeting on May 3rd. All of us talked through it. May 10th, they approved it, and now it's our turn to approve it, and then we will start working on that implementation signups. So it takes effect in July. Questions, comments? Jackie?
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall. Aye.
Motion carries. And a resolution approving a preliminary plat for Prairie Glen Part 3. Here comes Charlie.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second?
perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. Charlie DeSalle, Community Economic Development Director. On the screen here, you can see the existing Prairie Glen development down there. Old aerial photo, there are a lot of rooftops down in that area right now, but this one does propose to just go one block north of there. And if you look at the preliminary plat, which is on the next slide, it will show, sorry, I guess I got to do it up here, but you get that. It'll show a 19 lot subdivision, all single family units that are proposed. North 17th Street is proposed to be extended to the north. East Girard will then intersect with North 15th Street and then be stubbed in to the east of this property. And then the area on the top there from essentially Girard up to Iowa will be reserved for future development at some point in time. So Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this, so if there's any questions of me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions for Charlie?
Thank you.
Jackie?
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall.
Motion carries. Thank you. Other business, city manager's report. Ryan Waller.
Thank you, Mayor. I just got two quick items. May 19th, we have a scheduled meeting, a tour of the wastewater treatment facility site. Rick had been on the site and sent a picture. The ground's a little muddy with all the rain and with the forecast. We might need to reschedule that. So we will, I think Rick's choice was to, or Rick's, his goal is to see what it's like tomorrow and then we'll make the call. But, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Can we just say
FYI,
it's okay to move it? I think
if,
rain is
if,
projected the whole week.
Yeah.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
gonna be.
if we're comfortable with that, we can just make that call now and we'll take that agenda down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it makes sense.
We're excited to see it. Please don't tell him that it's not that, that
Right.
it's the mud.
Rick's on listening, so he's hearing you. And then the second item is just that later on, we have executive session. There's no action required after the executive session, but we do have a study session right after that. So the folks in the audience that wish to come back, the topic is Chris Shires from Confluence will be here to provide an update on the phase one of our code updates, which is one of the key recommendations coming out of the comprehensive master plan that was recently approved. So.
Absolutely. Okay. We need to receive and file the correspondence from April 30 to May 7th. Weekly updates from the city manager, Ryan Waller.
Make the motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And now we need a motion to go into closed session. Move to go into closed session.
Second.
Jackie, please.
Councilmember Marchant,
Aye.
Hewlin,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Kling,
Aye.
Schroeder,
Aye.
Southall.
Aye. Motion carries. We'll go into closed session here in just a few minutes, and then we will come out to adjourn, and then we will again go into our study session right after that. I think, Brian, you can tell them where to go. Get started with our May 17th council study meeting. First and only item on the agenda tonight is discussion and direction on phase 1 of the development code updates to the zoning and site plan code. And we're pretty excited about that. There was a meeting recently on this, so we had some good updates, but let's make sure everybody is aware and we know what we're doing.
You did a good job in that meeting, by the way, Chris.
Yes.
Zoom meeting.
Thank you for that. Hold on here, apologize. I was gonna go on to Zoom as well, and let's see everything come up on my screen. Oh, that's right. All right, there we go.
Same as what you already said, but everybody's different. That's fine.
Good. Thank you.
So close. Well, it worked on that screen. Let's see here. I just got to go back in. Funny enough, I've never actually done what we're doing right now, in person and sharing. So this is a fun new trial.
Well, we're a pretty good training group.
Yeah.
Try this one more time. I think that'll do it. Hey, how about
Looks
that?
good.
Good work.
Yeah, it works.
All right.
Man, okay. 3 hours later.
Yeah.
4-hour presentation. Okay, Mayor, if you're ready for me.
We're ready.
Okay, Mayor and Council, thank you so much for this opportunity to visit with you tonight. I'm Chris Shires with Confluence, your consultant on this project. A few of you have had to deal with me in the past, so apologies for that. We'll try to make this one just as entertaining. So for tonight, which now I can't see my own screen, but that's okay, I have a short presentation to run through a big picture overview of the zoning code update. Now I have to make it go over here. See, now there'd be something funny about this. Just a second here. There we go. Now that didn't switch on that screen. There we go. So we're going to walk through why are we doing this? Why are we doing this zoning code update in 2 parts? Talk through the process and then go through the chapters. So why are we doing this? We wanted to update some of the outdated regulations, kind of address the new things that we see going on. We want to improve, most importantly, your predictability and kind of the ease of which your constituents can use this code, whether it's property owners or developers, builders. There are some certain areas of concern that were raised as we met with your staff, interviewed some of your community stakeholders. There are some changes in state law and case law that we always have to address, and really to meet your long-term goals as you identified in your comprehensive plan. So we started this back in August, so 1-year process thereabouts, and then we'll wrap up here in phase 2 with another about a 1-year process to make some more updates. We had our public hearing with the commission back in May, and a public meeting right before that. Had some good feedback at both. And then in the phase 1 updates, it's all about looking at things related to how we want to lay out the code, the definitions, some of the special standards. But I'll jump ahead to phase 2. This is where we'll have some real fun dealing with your subdivision regulations and your sign code, which is always a fun one to update and regulate. We'll deal with parkland dedication requirements as well as streetscape standards.
So if I touch that screen, it's gonna switch on me, so I better stop that. Stop that. All right. I'll get this yet. So let's look at our chapter outline. So in your packet, of course, you could go through this in great detail, but I just want to walk through what all those chapters are and then hit some special highlights of where we made some adjustments and changes. So that first subchapter, so 165 is our zoning code chapter, the subchapter 01, it's all about the beginning and establishing your zoning district, your zoning code legally. And I want to talk a little bit about the changes to the actual zoning districts. We're going from 13 districts down to 11 districts, and we're doing some things to make it a little more clear. Hey, I'm in R1, what does that mean? It's single family homes. I'm in R2, could be single family homes and also townhomes, row houses. R3 could be townhomes and row houses, but it's meant for apartments. To make that clear differentiation, that separation, because we heard that from people having concerns with that. So we've kind of drawn a straighter line, as you can see, to the R1, R2, and R3 updated districts. And then we also merged the A1 and A2, those two ag districts, just into one, make it a little bit easier. And then you have that planned residential district and a planned commercial district. We just turned that into a new PUD district. Doesn't matter whether it's residential or commercial, could even be a mixed use PUD. That way you can handle something special. And then we clarified the purposes of your commercial district, C1, C2, and C3. C3 really being your downtown zoning district. And we kept your industrial districts. In this section 2, normally you're not going to look at it. Kind of a catch-all dealing just on how we use the code, issuing of occupancy permits, that you're going to adopt periodically the fee schedule by resolution, how we enforce this code. Definitions is a rather lengthy chapter. There's a lot of updated definitions we carried over from your current code, made some updates to it, and then added a bunch of new definitions we just need to have. General provisions, another kind of a catch-all chapter. We talk about how we interpret the code, as well as specifically dealing with accessory buildings and structures, antennas, satellite dishes, things that are not, say, cell phone towers. Those are a little bit different. Fences and walls, and then nonconformities. One thing we did update, this is through the process, is clarified that in the single family residential, for a detached structure, so think a garage or a shed that's not attached to the house, that we do not want those in front of the house or in the side yard unless they are a garage. And so we made that very specific that you could have a detached garage, say, next to your house, but not a shed. So we made that kind of clarification based on some public feedback. Let's talk a little bit about the big chapter, the zoning districts itself. Just to walk through kind of the layout. We talk about all the regulations for all the zoning districts. We did some consolidation, made all these charts and tables, make it a little easier to use. So we have the residential district setbacks, bulk regulations as we call them, all the other zoning district bulk regulations, and then the permitted and special uses table. In this section, we also have some other items related to wind energy, solar energy, accessory dwelling units, and all this other kind of stuff. But I'm going to talk a little bit about solar wind energy. And of course, as we get to the end of this, if you guys have questions, we can sure pull up the entire code and walk through anything specific. But instead of turning to each individual zoning district, you can turn to this table and see, it got cut off on the top there, but we have the different types of uses, buildings within the residential zoning district. So A1, R1, R2, R3, and R4 for multiple homes, and all their building setbacks. So you can see how they compare to each other. And we also have then their densities along the bottom. And I know there's some questions on that we can sure go through. In that everything else, the commercial districts, we stick to districts because I just wanted to make the differentiation on the residential ones. We're not listing the zoning districts, it's by type. So a single family house has these type of setbacks. Two-family house has these type of setbacks. Townhome has these type of setbacks. Apartments have these type of setbacks. Churches and schools and non-residential structures have these type of setbacks, no matter what zoning district they're in. And that was to alleviate some concerns that have been raised. So, but in the commercial and industrial districts, nope, we kept those by district. In particular, in your C3 downtown district, you tend not to want to have any side, front, rear yard setbacks because it's downtown. We're doing what we call zero lot line development. Now the use table, instead of having all those uses listed out by each individual zoning district and then having to flip back and forth, they're all spelled out in this big long table. If it has a, under each zoning district, so you can see R1, single family dwelling detached, P means permitted. If it's blank, it's not a permitted use in that zoning district. And if it has an S, it requires a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment following their review. One thing to note, based on public feedback, the commission did make a recommendation that the child care centers, so this is a commercial one, not one that's in a home, commercial one, that they be listed as special uses within your 2 industrial zoning districts. That's one that we kind of debated back and forth, and that was ultimately the commission's recommendation. So it's not a by right allowed in industrial district, but following a public hearing, the Board of Adjustment could make a decision should a specific location for one make sense. And so that's how we kind of think about those special uses. It's something that is not always appropriate in that zoning district. It might be following review. For the new section, we have addressing solar energy systems, solar photovoltaic, and this could also be collector or solar heat collector type units. Ground mount versus, say, building mount or rooftop, and you have the 2 different pictures there. On the left is the ground mount, on the right is the rooftop or building mounted type units. For the roof mounted building attached units, just pull a building permit. In certain situations with a commercial building might require a site plan to be approved. Try to make that pretty easy. And then there's some standards in the code on that. For ground mount, that was a little more controversial, whether that should be a permitted thing or not, or should it be allowed everywhere. So what ultimately came out of the Planning Commission was, let's say ground mounted could go in any zoning district, but requires a special use permit from the Board of Adjustment. And then we followed a model ordinance, the Iowa Solar Model Ordinance, to set some standards on height, setback, visibility, lot coverage. And this would be one section of your code going forward that I could imagine you'll make changes to over time. Something you'll start not liking, or something you find, you know what, that's not that big of a deal, let's make it easier. And in fact, other aspects of your code, I think that'll change over time as well. And we'll get into a few more here later on that I'm going to make a recommendation that you come back and visit periodically.
I actually had a call about that.
Oh, okay.
That was the only thing they wanted to talk about was the solar panel ground mount. So
yeah,
And they were for or against it.
they wanted to see it as an option, not that just free reign, but that, you know, with me, I have a 280-foot yard. Well, I could put it at the back of my yard fenced in and nobody would know it. So that's what he was trying to. I said, well, it sounds like they've got it figured out. So
Yeah, I had 4 calls on the same thing, so.
That's all wanting it.
I would just ask, I don't know if this is if it would ever be covered, but do they address anything with maintenance of the ground mounts? Is that, you know, being old enough to having gone through this already as a trend, I think that is probably the main issue is they're not maintained, you know, mowed, things like that. And I don't know if it's appropriate to address that or if it's even called for, but I'm a child of the 70s, so, you know, we've already been there.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying. Those old solar collectors, the solar heaters that would heat up water or some type of a coolant. Sometimes everything decays in the sun, and so the plastic bases started to fade and get milky. So in general, in your say building code, in your property maintenance code, in your nuisance code, there are things like, you know, peeling paint and broken windows. Nothing in this is as specific to say an old unit has to come down. You know, that would be interesting, something the effect of a system that no longer functions, no longer generates energy, might have to be removed. I think that's something that as you guys get into this and you know, want any tweak, we could probably add that as a little provision.
I think it's something that always comes later. I know that's discussion with wind turbines too. It's like, make sure there's a a plan to remove at some point. And
Yeah.
we don't think about those things on the front end until it's a problem.
Yeah, and when we get into your cell phone towers or tower ordinance, often we put in a provision that once they're obsolete, that they must be removed. But that'd be an interesting thing. So I'm going to take a note, but then you guys come back to me and ultimately tell me that you want something like that in there. Yeah, and
So far, it looks good. Now, we have another ash tree that's in our front, it's in front of our house. And it doesn't look as good, but I'm not convinced it's, like,
We have other issues.
It just
Kylan, our Parks and Rec.
Yeah, it's a person, okay, yeah.
okay.
Just got called out.
I think that's a solid comment.
Park Friends meeting,
Oh.
so he's doing double duty right
Doing
now.
duty.
The reason he brings this up is because Parkway and dedication, so if that comes up as a discussion point,
Gotcha.
Charlie, so.
Perfect.
And next time, and that'll be a fun one. Okay, well, you know what, at least he didn't interrupt a, closed session.
Right.
We're trying to let that go.
So one thing I do want to note that we're proposing here in one of your procedural changes is site plans. And this is for multifamily and commercial property, industrial property. It's not for single family homes. It's not for agricultural buildings. So basically everything else needs some type of site plan approval. What we're proposing is that site plan, when it's a significant site plan, goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review with a recommendation on to the council for ultimate review and approval. Certain, what we call minor site plans, if I click the page here, there we go. So minor site plans could be approved at an administrative level by your city staff, by your zoning official, provided they're meeting all code requirements. That official can't waive anything. That would not be outside their purview. The other thing to note is anything we have on that use matrix that's listed as a special use permit, that site plan can only go to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval as a part of that permit approval. And that has to do more with how state law is written and some case law. And so that's one that if you ever got uncomfortable with the board making a decision, you better make it a permitted use versus a special use, or maybe not permitted. Because the other hard thing we run into is when we list it as a permitted use and they meet all of your standards, you have to really make some tough findings on why something's very exceptional as to why it should not be approved. We do have some things written in your ordinance, kind of carry over from your current code, where if there's not adequate public facilities, adequate roadway, there's a safety issue, that can be some findings that the council can make to say, no, this is not a site plan we want to approve. And that's common. So the off-street parking section, so the parking chapter, we created this because right now you got to read through the entire zoning code to kind of figure out what my parking standards are for different types of uses. So we put it all in one area. We talk about that off-street parking is required. It's got to be paved. You can't park on dirt unless you're an industrial yard. Then there's some provisions for that on gravel and other surfacing. And then parking lot design standards and the number of spaces required. We also have a standalone open space and landscaping chapter and buffering chapter. And in this, we talk about open space percentages required by property. We refer back to our bulk regulations table, and then how much landscaping is required for each property. Special standards for landscaping and parking lots. So really an incentive to have the parking lots behind the building or smaller parking lots. And then requirements for buffering between dissimilar uses. And so if we got a retail building right up against a single family house, doing either a 30 or 60 foot wide landscape buffer park to try to add a little bit of buffering and transition. That's based on some feedback we received as well. And then some maintenance standards, all that. And we did carry through that standard about having some trees and shrubs planted for every new single family dwelling. And this is not retroactive. This applies for new construction or substantial rehab renovation of, say, a commercial site. And then building design standards. Now this is one where I can imagine over time, you're going to come back and revisit this. Your staff, your commission, and you will find something you either want to make more strict or less strict. Because this is one of those hardest things to have. And so this is where we're starting to get really specific about what we want our commercial and multifamily and industrial buildings to look like. We do not have specific standards for ag or single family. It's only when we're hitting townhomes, apartments, commercial buildings, mixed use buildings, office buildings, and industrial buildings. And kind of, it's a bell curve. As you go up that zoning ladder, you go from townhomes to apartments to commercial, mixed use, and then back down to industrial. The standards kind of come along with that, as is typical. So we have some general provisions requiring good architectural standards, some good architectural methods. We talk about exterior building materials, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. And then standards by building use type. So this is where we keep harping, it's not just the zoning district, it's what the building's used for. An apartment building's a lot different than a townhome, than a single family house. So we list all the different types of building materials we can think by class, and then there's a caveat that should something new show up on the market, or even a new version of an existing material show up on the market, that you as the council, as well as your staff, can make some judgment calls on it. I remember when, Hardy Plank first showed up, and we had a fear that it was a lot like masonite siding. Masonite siding being maybe not the weather resistant material they might have hoped it was, it falls apart quick, whereas Hardy Plank has now turned out to be rather durable. And so that would be an example of something like that would change over time. I think the same thing may happen with EIFS over time as its construction methodology improves and increases. We may over time value that higher than we do today. So we have things that are masonry and stone and all the different types of forms, and we put them in different classes. Class 1 and 2, think high quality, that's what we like to see a lot of, and mainly on that street facing facade. Class 3 is maybe that good secondary material on the sides and the backs of buildings. And then class 4 is materials we tend not to like very much, and we want to kind of limit their use to really kind of trim elements or not at all. And then we have concrete block, so fancy word for concrete block in all its forms, concrete masonry units. We try to use the terms the industry uses, so it's a little more clear. Concrete in all its many forms. It can be very fancy tilt-up concrete panels that are prefab, that have a texture and a color interval, all the way to cast in place. Metal, it's not just the wrinkled tin we put on barns anymore. There's some really high-end metal panel systems that go on very, very expensive office buildings. But we also have to note there's also cheap metal paneling and metal siding. And we value those very, very differently. And so we have different brand names and versions just for reference. And then glass in all its different forms. And then other materials. And this is where we start talking about fiber cement siding. Hardy Plank's a brand name. We talk about vinyl siding. We talk about exterior insulation finish systems, which is EIFS. Private would be a brand name. And then by each of these building types, we say we want to see so much percent of class 1 or 2 or 3, mainly on that front street facing facade. So we're trying not to make it too restrictive, but we're trying to dress up that main street facade, as well as just some good architectural detail. When appropriate, trim around a window or a doorway really helps. Pushing first floor glass, especially clear glass, makes a big difference. Just think when you're walking downtown or anywhere, the businesses you can see into are the ones you're more likely to walk into from a retail standpoint. Many of our retailers are definitely changing this way. Look how our gas stations went from really small windows to now 3-sided glass. So like the latest, say, Come and Go or Casey's prototype. So we go from ag buildings and single family, really no standards. That's kind of harder to regulate. But that horizontally attached residential, fancy way of saying townhomes and row houses. Vertically attached residential, another way of saying apartments, condominiums. And then non-residential buildings, typically churches and schools and government buildings, commercial and retail buildings, office and civic buildings, and then mixed use buildings, typically in your downtown, and of course, the industrials.
I have a question. And now this is for new construction, correct?
Yes,
What if somebody is remodeling the front of their downtown building? Would this have to apply, or is that?
yeah. Yes, and that is one that you may want to debate and kind of think about over time. I'm going to just turn to that provision and I can sure pull that up. So we have how this applies.
And as you're looking, I bring that up because there are many downtown businesses who have windows above on the second, third floor, or just blocked in with plywood and painted over. And I know in other cities, they try and get away from that and try and get glass replaced because it does look nicer. And I was just curious about that.
Yeah, and so what we do is on changes. So like if you're going to do an addition that's less than 20% of the total building square footage, you can continue to meet the current design standard of the building and work with staff on that. And you can do regular maintenance and repair with like material. But if you're going to deviate, let's say you have an all brick facade and you wanted to tear it off for one other reason or cover it with vinyl siding, this code would say, timeout, stop, no, you need to meet our design standards. Now, for the downtown, you can always get much more specific than that. This was trying to kind of catch a lot of different things, but we could sure get a little more stringent. But for downtown, most of them being mixed use buildings or commercial buildings, we do talk about minimum percentage for first floor glass, and then a higher standard for that street facing facade material, combination of class 1 and 2 building materials at a pretty high percentage. And so I'd be happy to switch and actually pull open the whole code and we can kind of click to anything you guys want to see too. And but I do think that would be in particular one thing that over time you may ratchet it up or ratchet it down.
Right.
I would like to see a little bit more about the downtown.
Yeah. I can see that far. It's not letting me bring up hold on here, come on.
You have to stop sharing the screen first, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my bar back. Okay, I'm gonna come over here. There we go.
Should have never done it this way, sorry.
Well, I think it's Gwen's fault.
It is.
She wanted to go into the code documents.
I do, and the devil is in the details and all these things, guys. I mean,
Well,
like,
Dell's just ruined the presentation.
I'm sorry, I'm not getting very good at having more questions, so
Well,
I don't
according to
know.
this, there are no windows.
If you want me to meet with Chris alone, I can. I'm just
No,
saying.
you already brought it up.
I have questions. I have a list.
You're good. It's just kind of fighting with the projector.
I know, I'm on the protocol now.
You don't want to.
Some of us don't want to be here forever.
I'm sorry. Really out of control. Really, I don't need all of you here either. John's throwing.
One more time.
Just do it right on the projector, don't worry about sharing it.
Okay.
I just hate looking at those second story.
I know,
things that are
oh, there's
boarded
just a
up.
lot of things that after the fact, I'm afraid we'll say, oh, we didn't think of that. I wanna. I don't want any more calls about
Well,
some of these
But you
things.
can't make them.
Well,
If there's a certain percentage of a remodel, you could.
But-
Yeah.
But if there's no remodel going on, you can't just.
Well,
say
no,
no.
but that's my point. That's my point.
Yeah.
When do they have to stick to what design?
Well, and what does new
Yeah.
have to do? I
Right.
mean, if
Yeah.
somebody tore a building down or completely refaced it, I mean.
well, and so there's a couple things. So
No,
first
it's
of all,
just not- it's not like
the
It's, you're duplicating.
Councilman Schroeder
Yeah,
mentioned
it's-
just
I'm
going
trying
too
to
far
send
down the
this
road,
over.
and
It's just not like.
you're not
doing this.
You're not going to think of everything. I mean, that's just,
Right.
that's part of this process.
Yeah, right.
The important part is having, you're doing, the Planning and Zoning Commission has done a lot of work to go through and work with Confluence. That's, we started with the interviews, the comp plan, having that drive some of the details in there. But then as we get through this and we start applying this more, then there's going to be other things that come up that we do become aware of. There's going to be new technology like the bird scooters as an example, where that's going to become more apparent. Or, there's going to be residents are going to call, hey, this went up in my neighborhood. And, there's going to be things that you're just not going to be able to think of that is going to be driven by the community response or requests or new technology and things like that. So having a new updated zoning code is going to make it easier to do those updates down the road. Now, with respect to the specific windows that you're talking about, Councilman Kling, that was something that was identified in the 2018 square assessment.
Oh, yeah.
That was something that was identified by those state assessors. And one of the key recommendations, so streetscape was a big recommendation coming out of that assessment. But one of the other things that they talked about was the facade improvement program and getting that back up. Because once for whatever reason, that stopped prior to my, it wasn't in place when I started working here, so I don't know the background, but that's one of the comments that we've heard over and over as we've gotten more interest from businesses and developers, especially with the stuff that's happening on the square now. There's folks saying, hey, we're interested in purchasing a building. What kind of facade improvement programs do you have? So those are types of things that you can do. Having the design standards in place, but then if you're going to offer an incentive like a facade improvement, you do a development agreement that says you have to comply with this. And so that's where you can require the adherence to those design standards.
I just didn't know whether there's a certain percentage, of remodel compared to brand new, where there was a percentage that applied or not. That's what I was curious about.
So any facade change would have to comply with these new regulations. What I've highlighted on the screen is additions 20% or less than the gross floor area of the existing building. And you can't just come in and do a little bit every couple of years. It's a cumulative percentage, just kind of like we do in the fire code for what might trigger eventually fire sprinkling the building. So that kind of cumulative approach. They'd have to follow the design standards, but if they're less than 20%, they can use same or superior building materials to kind of match. And so there's a little bit of leeway in there trying to work with an existing building. So in the case of the downtown, this would say somebody can't come in and, block in all the windows or put up a bunch of vinyl siding or do some kind of fake facade if that is not in keeping with these current design standards. And what we could do is make that even more specific and tie it even more clearly back to, say, the C3 district, the downtown district. And in fact, if that's a big concern, I might suggest we do that. What we do say is that this does not apply to facade maintenance and repair, including painting surfaces, replacing windows, siding, roofing, as long as it's identical or similar material. So, if you had vinyl siding on the building today, you could replace it with vinyl siding. But if you had brick, this would say you shouldn't cover it or can't cover it with brick. But if that is a concern on the downtown, I might suggest we just add something much more specific.
I feel like you're recommending we should, and that's what I want to know. Basically, is what do you recommend? If you think we should, I think we should. I just am trying to anticipate. I know we can't anticipate everything, but lately there have been several things in my ward that are unrelated to downtown that obviously somebody didn't think of years ago, and it's a disaster. So
yeah,
I'd like to try to
I
be more proactive.
would like to see that.
Well, then how about I craft something and then you guys will have it, and it's something you can vote on at your
That'd be great.
public meeting.
June 7th.
And same thing on the whole solar, and frankly, as long as we're touching it, wind energy, the wind conversion system, having something about a removal when obsolete.
So what you're asking for, Bob, is, or what you're thinking of, and Gwen, is that anytime something is done onto a building on the square, whether it be inside or outside, that they have to meet those guidelines.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, it makes sense.
And that we're consistent. and
Right.
that,
Yeah.
You know, I'm not trying to dictate what any individual owner, I mean, there has to be personal expression
Right.
that is appropriate for the business. But I just think
Okay.
that would be best.
And scroll down through here. Oop.
Especially since it's come up before as a concern.
Okay, and I just wanted to highlight, since I think you guys are interested, if I can just get this not to jump so far. It's not liking all this extra screen sharing. One more. All right. So we have which in most cases I would apply for your downtown, but the mixed use building. So each primary facade, which we previously defined as being your street facing facade or facade with the main entry, if not also the street facing facade, has to have no less than use three different materials from the class 1 and 2 list. And that could be glass, that could be windows, which often will be windows, will be one of them. And so like brick or a good quality metal or a stone, something like that. And then it has to cover at least 75% of that street facing facade. So a significant majority. And then class 3 and 4 can't be more than 25%. And in fact, we further restrict class 4 to not exceed 5% of that primary facade. We also say that that street facing or entry facade has to have at least 30% clear window opening. That could be doors, windows, but clear glass can't be like mirrored or completely covered. And then we talk about using the quality roofing material. And then we want that facade bay broken up at least every 80 feet of width. Now, kind of rare in the downtown because most of them are not going to be that wide anyway, but there is a couple occasions where that could happen. Just want to make sure that facade face is broken up. So that was the kind of the big thing. And then if I could get this, go down to the next page. We have a little bit on industrial too, we can cover, but the commercial, which could also apply, is really similar, except for we only had a 20% glass standard instead of the 30% glass standard. And I could imagine that'll be one of those things you guys will adjust over time based on buildings you like and don't like what they're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're here
I got in
for.
trouble with everybody here, but thank you, Chris.
That's just because I couldn't figure out how
By
to
the end of this meeting,
make the
they're gonna be
magic
really
work.
mad at me.
Frankly, that's what this meeting is for, though, is
Yeah,
for you
that's
guys to
what I
kind of hear the
thought.
code and give us some preliminary feedback so we can bring you back options for your actual action at the next meeting. So, anything else you guys want me to run through?
You mentioned signs earlier. I don't know that much. I know where we owned our business in Altoona, there were some very specific signage regulations, which were frustrating to us as business owners. But in looking at it from the city perspective, I could certainly understand it. So I don't know. We had an existing sign that we could only move 6 feet. We couldn't make it any higher, and it was very regulated.
Yeah.
Or replace it with a very expensive, what do they call those low ones, John, cornerstone signs?
Monument sign.
Yeah.
Monument signs, yeah. So I don't know if that's something we need to review or
So-
not.
That'll be next time.
Oh,
So
that's
if you will, next budget year,
Okay.
we'll bring back signage, and I have a nice little presentation I'll do for you
Okay.
guys where we'll get into just that. Because one is just a little background of this is a pole sign, this is a monument sign, and then all the many, many other sign types. And then to really get into how far do you guys want to go? And sometimes we trade quality for square footage. We'll let people have bigger signage, more signage, but we want higher quality signs. So that'll be something to kind of debate. Some of your stakeholders that I've already interviewed have given some feedback on that. So I already have some ideas, but that'll be next time. And what I can guarantee is that'll be one of the most fun chapters to review because it's the hardest. And there's been some changes on case law that really restrict how cities can regulate signage that you're going to find really, really frustrating, and it is what it is.
Then when you're a sign guy on the other side. So I walk that fine line, trust me.
Okay, sorry, I thought you meant that we were talking about.
Yeah, no, that'll be next time, and it's a great topic. So maybe start thinking about it. You know, what do you like and not like? You want your businesses to have advertisement, but you don't want the city to look junky. So it's all that trade back with electronic signs and all of that. And no matter what, we promise to make the sign companies more money. Because it'll be more expensive signs.
And I would tell you that most of them would just like to have a little more design freedom, because the trend has been going to controlling I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not going to say specifically what communities, but some of them, man, I mean, there's just nothing you can do. And it's just, and to be honest with you, it makes them very boring.
Oh, yeah.
No
Well, I mean,
design.
And the
then
bottom
you just-
line for a sign is to promote your business. So if it's too restrictive,
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
there is a fine line.
yeah, we don't want to
I'm
break, I
anxious
mean,
for that.
we want to promote our businesses.
But that's next year.
Right, that's
Yeah.
it.
Sorry, again, I'm not in any hurry. I have questions, so.
And parkland dedication, but next year. But anything else you guys want me to run through?
I have just a few little questions. So should I just fire them off and you can tell? Okay.
Yes, please.
So this is the other night you mentioned density of townhouses and apartments, 8 to an acre for townhouses, 20 to an acre for apartments. How does that compare to our peer cities? And to me, it seemed highly dense, but I don't know if I'm, looking at it wrong or what. Having just been through this with a company, I just think we need to take a good look at that.
Right. Oh, and again, it's not cooperating nicely with me. Hold on here. I just want to get to that little section here. So what we have is in the bottom. Now you can't see the top. Hold on here. So really the one where densities come into, it's the townhome row dwelling, typically an R2 district, a new R2 district. And then the new R3 district, it's the multifamily, so apartments. So that 8 dwelling units per acre for townhomes, row houses is cities are a little bit all over the board on where they put that. 6 to 12 or 8 to 12. Many cities do go up to 12 dwelling units per acre for townhomes. Those are actually pretty rare to see them that dense. So I put in 8 on this one, and that's not terribly dense for a townhome development. On apartments, even at 3-story apartment buildings with some green space are still about 18 dwelling units per acre. If you did go to 4-story tall apartments, or even higher, 5-story, but really 4-story, you can get to 20 or 22. More cities probably are above 18 and 20 dwelling units per acre in apartments than say below 18. Again, it's a little bit of a personal preference. We could probably point to some examples, but most apartment projects that you see are probably 16 to 18 dwelling units per acre when they're in a more suburban or town development. Downtown Des Moines, some of those are at 30 or 36.
Right, so
Just for
compared to say Pleasant Hill and West Des Moines, just grabbing 2 communities.
West Des Moines probably wouldn't be as much because you're going to have more 4- and 5-story apartments there.
West Des Moines actually does cap theirs at 18 unless you do like a PUD.
Okay.
Pleasant Hills, I did that one. I can't remember if it's 22 or 24 or 26. It's above this number.
Okay. So we're on the low end of density is what you're saying?
Yes, yes,
Comparatively.
yes.
How about townhouses?
Yeah, definitely on townhouses. I can, because many cities are not necessarily putting a limit on that.
Okay.
Now, we've done some other things in your code to help alleviate some of the concerns we heard with density and appearance. So setting a minimum open space standard of 25% for townhomes and apartments is going to help. That'll naturally help limit just how dense a property is. The same thing with some of those setback standards. So for particular townhomes and row houses, they got to be at least when they're like a 3 or 4 unit together, they're hitting another unit side by side, it's got to be 16 feet apart. And if it's a corner or the side of a unit to the back of another unit, it's got to be, what did I put in there? 46 or back to back 46. So they just can't all be 8 feet from each other. They can't be real tight. So that'll make a big difference, especially then the 20-foot setback from the private street, so that there's enough parking, say, in a driveway. So some of those things I think is going to help alleviate the concerns. The other thing is, if it's a detached structure, it has to have its own lot. If it's a 2-unit structure, it has to have its own lot. It's only once you get into townhomes and row houses with these standards, and you're needing that R2 zoning, can you have multiple units on one lot. So in most cases, you'd be doing, in essence, a subdivision.
Okay, and did you say earlier, did you talk about mobile homes? I didn't catch the entire, is that next time or?
No, that's with this, and all we did is kind of update and refresh that existing mobile home chapter, I should say manufactured housing park zoning district. You do have to have one as a city. And we just kind of updated the standards that are in there. But it is its own zoning district with its own regulations specific. And then we did keep some of your manufactured housing building standards in place, and about conversion to real estate and putting on a foundation, all that type of stuff.
Charlie, did you address the other things that we discussed the other day with Chris? I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean.
I don't
Chris
want
and
to keep
talked
everybody here.
Yeah, Chris and I had talked about the email that you sent today, Chris has seen it, I know, and I'm trying to recall what a few of them.
Yes,
some of
see if
them
I
were
missed
parking
anything.
issues.
Parking spots for apartments.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to remember things on that. And so in this, and I could even switch that section, but we do talk about requiring one parking space per bedroom. So 3-bedroom unit, 3 parking stalls, 2-bedroom,
Okay.
2 parking stalls. We also do a discount for garages. Sometimes detached garages or garages are part of an apartment complex. Many of them get used for storage or not necessarily rented. And so we don't want to give a 1-to-1 parking ratio or parking credit, unless of course it's kind of the fancier style where garages are tucked under and you have direct access from your garage into your unit. That's a real popular style, especially as we go farther north. In that case, we are doing a 1-to-1 credit, which is fair, as well as an allowance that if you can park in front of your own garage space, that can be counted as a parking stall, just like you would for single family or townhomes. So hopefully that helps with any parking concerns.
Yeah, I was just thinking street parking around apartments. We have a problem with that in my ward. So.
And I think the big thing is to make sure that, and I think with this standard, you're going to have a lot better success having adequate parking on site, off street, if you will, rather than on street.
That wasn't what I had understood. So it was per bedroom. How about 2x4 versus 2x6 construction? How many cities in our area allow or restrict, I guess I should say, restrict to 2x6?
So that one, I did not have enough time to look to see if there's anything out there like
I just had
that.
somebody comment on that to me.
It seems a
someone I
little
would
unique.
expect to know. Yeah, someone I would expect to know said we were one of the few allowing 2x4 construction anymore, which I just don't know, but I'm not sure what the issues are around that.
And it is a built-in code thing more than a zoning code thing.
Okay,
so.
true.
The only time I typically see a difference, or you see a difference in the construction, just from my experience, is when you're trying to meet an enhanced energy code. When you're trying to meet that higher level, because now you have more wall depth in which to do a thicker amount of insulation. Or if truly it's a pretty large home and you want a more rigid wall. I know in an addition I used 2x6 for a bunch of reasons.
But that is a building.
But my garage
I
is
didn't
2x4.
realize that wasn't part of the zoning.
Yeah, and if something like that, I definitely think would be more appropriate to be in your building code regulations. And I would tie it back to wanting to meet some kind of energy code standard. I was going to look at that email.
That's
make sure I got
okay.
them all.
No, I think everybody's done, so I'll just be done. I'll talk to you individually.
Yeah, and please do if anything comes up. Anything else you guys want me to roll through?
Love the charts. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Starting to see that more and more, and it makes it so
Yes.
much easier to get that
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
information.
And quicker reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
From a
yeah.
user standpoint.
Right. Not flipping back and forth. And then the other thing I really do like on the charts is, especially for the uses, is you really can compare zoning districts. Are we being fair? Because you're kind of stair stepping through.
Right.
And so that would be a chart I could see making changes over time too. Kind of like with the daycare.
Chris, I think some of these are gonna be quick. Trash, screening of trash for facilities.
Yep. And so we do not have anything, say, for single family residential. That'd be a little more advanced than we typically see, but do have that for anytime you're going to have a trash dumpster, grease interceptor, things like that.
Multifamily or.
Yeah, so multifamily commercial.
Enclosures, yeah.
Yep, doing
Does
enclosure.
anyone regulate residential?
Single family residential, so townhomes and apartments and commercial
Right,
and
single
industrial
family.
office, yes. Single family is a lot more
Yeah.
rare.
Mhm.
The only thing I typically see in a code, and it's normally in the, I call it the public works right-of-way section, is you can't set your garbage can into the parking area before, 24 hours in advance. I've actually gotten written up on that one. I don't know, anyway, and that you got to remove it, a day or two after it's picked
Right.
up. But as far as like, requiring those to be screened or located, sometimes a really nice private subdivision may have subdivision may have its own private restriction on
Right,
that.
right.
If it has, say, an active homeowners association.
I think it's in our covenants we have where we can't.
Well,
and can't
it
have
is,
them,
and
so.
that does, well, that's probably not related to this either, but covenants are enforced by the
Right.
development
Mhm.
and not by the city, so,
Right.
yeah, it's in our covenants, but people don't comply, so.
Anything else?
Building and storefronts, cart collectors, so design standards, landscaping around big box stores or new large commercial developments. So there's.
Yeah, in fact, what we talk about in some of the outdoor storage and display is that when you have a site plan come in, now it's hard to do this retroactively, but you get a new Hy-Vee or a new grocery store, big box, not to pick on anybody, a new Target. As a part of the site plan process, they need to show you where they want to do outdoor sales and display, where the shopping carts are going, and where the any storage. So like Home Depot, Lowe's is a good example, or even Menards, where their outdoor stuff is, that's going to be an enclosure and screen. So we have some language on that. We didn't go terribly far on shopping carts. We could always go farther, but that's always kind of a controversial one.
Well, because there's a big difference between what's required in just being out in other communities, just
Yeah.
the cart receptacle itself, which I realize is a, minor detail, but again, like I said, devil's in the details on some of these things, on how it looks when it's all done.
Right.
So that's why I would like to know.
And so I'm just going through here. Yeah, nothing to that point of saying what those cart corrals have to look like. More to the point of that we want kind of the regular display storage areas shown and screened. One, that they can do that, but two, that we just know where they are. I have to go click through. So if you guys want me to go a little bit farther on that, I was just going to try to get to that. Yeah.
But does that have to be regulated if the site plan has to be approved though? Wouldn't that be part of that process?
Yeah, and so this is just a part for new construction.
Right.
Yeah,
Right, but so
or
how does it-
substantial renovation or
How does
remodel.
the site plan regulate that then? Like,
Oh, right here in the end of chapter 16505. And so I just have to kind of scroll through it here. So we have a section on outdoor storage and display. Kind of, there's a couple things just limiting it and showing it on the site plan. Loading docks, delivery doors, service overhead doors, trash and recycling receptacles, equipment screening, exterior lighting, ATMs. But I don't have anything, and if you want something, I can sure add it. I don't have anything specific dealing with shopping carts, say those shopping cart corrals in the design standard.
I would say yes, but I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I can create something and have it as a part of your packet for consideration then. Anything else?
The only other thing I saw in the email was the campers and trailers on cement thing, and I
Yep.
mentioned that one too. I don't know how other communities handle that.
Yeah, it is pretty common that they're all on a paved surface. And in fact, what we've got in there is, has to be on a paved surface. And then there are some limitations on where you can pave, but typically paved surface, so single family could be on the driveway portion or behind the house, paved surface again. But then kind of the nuisance regulation that's really common is that any vehicle stored outside has to be licensed and operable. So if you want that project car that you're going to continuously work on, you need to leave it in your garage. And so that's one way to kind of deal with the junk cars, is that licensed and operable. Well, then if it looks rough, at least it drives, at least it's licensed and legal for the street.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And that's pretty common for most communities to have something like that. We did take away the temporary parking on grass thing just because that would be kind of problematic in enforcement, in my opinion at least.
Yeah.
So Charlie, would that, if we did do that, it has to be up, does that affect our facility that's out on Hillcrest? That's a storage facility that's got the gravel lot.
No, it's industrial, so.
Because it's industrial, okay.
Yeah, and that was
I just wanted to
improved
make
outdoor
sure.
storage
Yep,
area.
yep, okay.
So yeah, so here's where we're kind of balancing that line between, we're doing some special things related to the single family because we do, but
Right.
then industrial operates this a little bit
Right,
different.
yes, that makes sense. Okay, good. Just want to make sure that.
All right. All right.
Very thorough,
Okay.
very, very complete, lots of details, lots of time has been spent, lots of input. So we greatly appreciate all the work you're doing with us. Greatly appreciate all the feedback from everybody, questions. This is how we build better codes, if we engage with it.
That's right.
Over 7 hours, what was it?
Go 5 hours for the steering committee and 2 meetings.
Yeah.
Both of which started at 7 o'clock at night.
Yeah, that's a lot after a long day of work, but we appreciate it because it's important and we all want our city to move
Yep.
forward in the best way possible.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so very much.
Any other party questions? Think we're good? Yes?
Good.
All right.
Can we get one more screen share configured?
Just see what you have in your
Oh my
repertoire.
goodness.
You stand in
I've
adjournment.
literally never done all three at once.
Thank you.
They're not going to do the painting tonight.